Good morning, everyone, and welcome to FPC Radio Live. It is Wednesday, August 24th. We are just here live on Full Press Radio on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course, anywhere you can pretty much get video. Twitch, we have a Twitch channel to check it out. Once again, it's August. We're getting close to the NFL season. One more preseason game for everyone, and then it is a little bye week. And we got NFL football again, John. But that is not where we're going to start. We're not going to start with Tom Brady. Not going to start with Jimmy G. We're going to start with the Aaron Rodgers equivalent in the NBA, and that is Kevin Durant, who is quite humorously going to be staying with Brooklyn this upcoming season. And you know what? Sign me up for it, John, because I am just waiting for that thing to explode once again.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be certainly interesting, and I think it's the best thing for the league for him to stay in Brooklyn. Now, the big question is what happens with Kyrie Irving. I would assume he stays for one more year because he opted in for $37 million. And then the X factor with Brooklyn, of course, is Ben Simmons. Is he going to play, and how good is he going to be? But the Durant thing was really important because the NBA is in a delicate situation right now. In 2 years, the CBA is up. The new TV deal kicks in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And the TV deal is enormous. It's $75 billion for 10 years, meaning every team is going to be receiving $250 million a year for 10 years. So the salary cap is going to go through the roof. So players that now make $50 million will probably be making $75 million once their next contract kicks in. So there's plenty of money to be made. And I think that right now the league doesn't want to look at itself as a place where a player signs a contract, a 4-year extension like Kevin Durant did last year, and doesn't even play for that team when that contract kicks in. Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, has committed 7 years, $320 million to Kevin Durant. And he's only gotten 2 years and 90 games out of him, and then Durant wanted out. So Joe Tsai stood up, and I think the other owners look at it and say, well, at least we feel now that we can push back somewhat. And I always support the players, 99% of the time. In this case, for the good of the league, you know, it has to be fair. As Mark Cuban has often said, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. You know, they've got a great thing. Let's not get too gluttonous about all of this. And I think it works out best that Kevin Durant stays in Brooklyn for the time being. Who knows? Next summer, we may be talking about this again, that, you know, Kyrie has gone somewhere else because he can go into free agency and Kevin Durant is forced to trade to wherever. But that doesn't seem to be on the table until next year.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I'm there with you. I'm always usually going to be in the side of the player, especially when it comes to getting money or whatever. In this situation, I don't disagree. I think from Kevin Durant's perspective, he's looking at this as just like a ticking time bomb. And I'm like, all right, I'm all for it. You know, that's one of the reasons why I'm happy that he's staying in Brooklyn because, you know, realistically, John, you know, thinking, you know, about a basketball perspective, you know, last year was obviously tumultuous when it comes to injuries and COVID and this and that, trading James Harden, getting Ben Simmons, not having to play. So you can only imagine that they're going to have, I mean, there's only one way to go, right? I mean, unless you absolutely hit the bottom of the barrel, I don't think that's going to happen. But realistically, what do you think this team is capable of? Because I mean, by all accounts, I mean, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving can get their minds right, you know, and get on the same page with Steve Nash and the entire thing, I mean, this team could still be dangerous. I just don't know. I'm not going to sit there and, especially if I'm a Nets fan, I'm not going to sit there and expect it because I think the problems that they went through last year were a little bit deeper than just things on the surface.
Yeah, major problem last year was the relationship between Kyrie Irving and James Harden, and that's why Harden wanted out. So they traded him for Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons never played 1 minute for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, he's the X factor to me because if he's Ben Simmons of 2-3 years ago, you have an elite defender, an elite playmaker, a guy who can rebound and can give you 15 points per game, which is perfect for what the Nets need because scoring is handled by Durant and Kyrie Irving. The question is, how many games is Durant going to play? How many games will Kyrie Irving play, and how many games will Simmons play, and how many games will they play together? That's a big question. Do you realize in a year and a half that James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant played a grand total of 16 games together? So they had absolutely no chemistry, and they're wonderful players, and they can figure it out, but you do need to play together at some point. The key here for Brooklyn is I think they've built a pretty decent roster around those three guys. You know, Royce O'Neal is a nice addition. T.J. Warren. You got Joe Harris as an elite three-point shooter. Seth Curry's a great three-point shooter as well. Patty Mills is a champion. I think they've built a pretty good roster. If everything fits into place, they absolutely will be a contending team. But that's a big if when you're talking about Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. The thing is, in January, before Durant got hurt, Brooklyn was the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and that was with James Harden not being totally engaged and Kyrie Irving not able to play home games and, you know, go on his occasional sabbaticals. They still were the number one team in the Eastern Conference. Then once Durant got hurt, everything just fell apart, and they really never recovered and ended up being the 7th seed, had to go through the play-in and got swept by the Celtics. So if Durant's healthy, and that's a big if because he's never been the most durable guy, especially recently, and Kyrie gives you even 60, 65 games, they certainly will be a contending team because I think those pieces really fit because Simmons is as much as he's a whatever you want to call him, off the court and his inability to deal with some of the things on the court, he is a very unique player that will fit in with players like that because he does a lot of the other things that they won't have to worry about, like defense and facilitating, and he's an excellent rebounder as well.
And he doesn't seem like he's the alpha, which has been a criticism of his, but could work to his advantage in this situation because before you had three guys that were mega, you know, with Harden, Durant, and Kyrie, which, you know, unbelievable talents. I mean, no one's going to deny the talent, but, you know, especially in a sport like basketball where it's, you know, a very small number of players relative to some of these other, you know, certainly football where you have 53 guys on the roster and 11 players at once on the field. You have only 5 and really about 4, those 5 starters are the only ones that necessarily matter. I mean, no disrespect to bench players or anything like that, but maybe not specifically the 5 starters, but generally about 5 players are the most important with, you know, 2, 3 being the key to whether this team succeeds or not. So in basketball, you need to have that cohesion, cohesion, not coercion. It's the wrong word. English language, it's a funky thing, but you need to have that cohesion between your superstars, and they just didn't have that with those 3 guys with egos. Now, again, maybe Ben Simmons is he prefers kind of being in the background a little bit, and maybe that's going to bring the best out of him because in Philadelphia, he was the guy who, you know, was the high draft pick. You know, he was the guy that was chosen over Jason Tatum, you know, or I'm sorry, not Jason Tatum, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's
over Jaylen Brown.
Yes,
he was the first pick in that draft.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure on that, you know, and then again, John, it could absolutely explode because, you know, you could argue that Kyrie and Kevin Durant are in a lot of ways a lot like Joel Embiid, and that didn't work out between those two.
There's not a lot of really strong leaders in the NBA, right? I think obviously the first 2 that come to mind are Steph Curry and LeBron James. Those are the guys that set the culture. They're very comfortable being the guy that after a tough loss will go in front of the media and answer questions.
Your best leaders predominantly are guys that don't play. Aged veterans. I mean, and that's kind of a problem in the NBA because, you know, there's a lot of individuals, young stars that are individuals in this league. And you don't, it seemed like I never really thought about it until you kind of just said it. And it's like, you know, that there really aren't a lot of like true floor general leaders type guys in this league.
Right.
And you name 2 that, I mean, that's right off the top of my head are the only 2 that I can think of. So.
Yeah, and Chris Paul as well, but he hasn't won a championship yet, and he may never win a championship, so that's kind of a dent against him. But, yeah, I mean, and then you look at this Brooklyn Nets situation, I think Kyrie thinks of himself as a leader, but he's
that's
not.
The problem. He thinks one thing and he's another, so.
Exactly, that is the problem. And with Durant, I don't think he's ever really wanted to be that. I think that's why he was so...
Which is fine.
Well, which is fine. He's effective wherever he plays because he's so damn good. I mean, but in Golden State, you had Steph Curry. You had Draymond Green, who's kind of like the bouncer, who kind of cleans up a lot of the mess and is the enforcer and not afraid to speak up and does leadership in his own way. So it was perfect for him to just kind of lay in the weeds and be that great basketball player. But, yeah, there's just not a lot of those guys. I think the Celtics have this issue as well. I think Marcus Smart kind of wants to be that guy, but he's just not good enough to be that guy, right? So, you know, he's trying to be a leader.
Tatum's learning his way.
I think he's, you know, I've been impressed with him in a sense that even the interviews he's done since the finals, he seems to be much more self-aware now than he was, 2-3 years ago. And again, he's only 25 years old. He's still a baby. But I think he's learning to be self-aware and understand that that's something that grows. And again, you don't have to be this loud, boisterous guy to be a leader. You don't have to tip over the Gatorade bucket and do all that stuff. In fact, to me, that's kind of like over the top. I think a leader is someone who just, outworks everybody.
You're not doing it for attention if you're the leader. And if you're being boisterous and animated, then generally that means you're seeking some sort of attention. And
exactly.
That kind of undermines your leadership goal, because at the end of the day, it seems a bit selfish. But yeah, look, I mean, Jason Tatum's getting there. This isn't stuff that, so some players are just, based on talent, that's obviously a big factor in all this, and whether or not you're a leader, because there's innate qualities in people that make them leaders, but certainly in the world of sports, you also have to perform. Mm-hmm. You could be the most wisdom-filled, wise player on the field. You may have the answers to everything. You may know every right thing to say. But if you're not doing it on the court, no one's going to care. I'm saying from a fan perspective mostly. Obviously players respect older players. Udonis Haslem just signed another year contract with Miami. Obviously barely plays a lick on the court, but his leadership is valued off the court, and the younger players, I'm sure, will attest to that. But he's not going to be thought of among the biggest or the best leaders in the league right now. If you're going to come out with a list, I think, again, a lot of people might, it'll probably be a little bit bigger than our list, but I think the leadership qualifications are a little bit looser in the general public. But yeah, the NBA is lacking those guys, and Brooklyn is a prime example, because they have the superstar. Good God, do they have the superstars? You could argue you have two of the best players at their respective positions, at two of the more important positions in the league in this NBA. A guy that can shoot, a guy that can handle the ball, and a guy who, like Kevin Durant, is just a mismatch, no matter what. Obviously, we saw the Celtics as a team control that, but there's not too many teams out there that are going to be as good as the Celtics or the Warriors defensively. That's not common. So for the most part, this Nets team should cook, so to speak.
Let Russ cook, right? Like they say, they said in Seattle, and maybe they'll say in Denver, and then, the gas isn't quite high enough to cook for Russ.
No. Well, he cooks 3 times as much as everyone else. Come on.
He does. Yes, he's got a big, giant grill, and he's got, microwaves and everything else. You have an incredible amount of disdain for Russell Wilson. Mine is a little bit less. Mine's a little bit less. But yeah, I kind of get the thing. I think he's kind of phony. I think maybe because I love Colin Cowherd. I think he's great at what he does, but he'd love Russell Wilson. He constantly puts him in the same category with Brady and LeBron James, and I'm like, no, he's not. Yeah, there's only 2 guys in that class. Those 2 guys are separate from everybody. But yeah, I think. But, the interesting thing, Ian, is you look at duos of big threes in the NBA, and sometimes they just don't work, right, because of the style of play. Look, when LeBron went to Miami, it wasn't easy for that to work, because he and Wade kind of butted heads a little bit on and off the court, but then Wade was such a good leader that he ceded leadership to LeBron. That's also part of being a great leader, understanding that there's another guy around that you want to bring in. And then Chris Bosh never really fit in as the third guy, but they did win 2 championships because they were really good. But I look at this Nets trio and I say this could really work, because like you said, Ian, Durant and Kyrie are incredibly efficient players, right? These are guys that shoot close to 50% from the floor. They're both capable of shooting 40% from 3, 50% from the floor, and 90% from the free throw line. There's not a lot of guys that do that in the league now or ever. And then Simmons is, to me, the perfect 3, almost like a little bit different, but kind of like how Rodman was with the Bulls. He's going to rebound and defend and do those dirty work type things, kind of like Draymond does with Golden State. And that's perfect. This could, look, the ceiling is high, the floor is low. I know it's such a cliche, but this could be the best team in the Eastern Conference, or they could be back where they were a year ago as the 7th seed going through the play-in and having to face either the Celtics or Milwaukee in the first round. And good luck with that if they're not all on point. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch this season as this team tries to right itself. This is now the 4th year, by the way, that it's Durant and Kyrie together. I know Durant didn't play the first year because of the injury, but it's been a while, and they really haven't done anything.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is starting to kind of history repeats itself. When they went out and gave up all that capital to go out and get Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and everything like that, and again, what has it got them? Well, they haven't even gotten back to the Eastern Conference Final.
Right?
So, what are they doing here? So we'll see kind of how that unfolds. We already mentioned LeBron a little bit, but we'll mention him again right now, just to satisfy your need there, John. He signed a new contract, 2 more years extension with Los Angeles, and this kind of ends the pattern of 4 years and taking off and going somewhere else. Kind of what was happening the last decade or so with LeBron, but. I couldn't imagine him going elsewhere at this point in his career. When it happened, we might have even talked about it at the time, but like when it happened, it's like, okay, it makes sense for him to go to LA. What is he going to do post career? Well, guess what? LA is where you go. So, the problem I have is if, say I'm a Lakers fan, I don't think this team got any better. In fact, I think they might have taken a little bit step back. And how, what do you expect from this team moving forward? Well, last year they didn't even make the playoffs. So as great as LeBron James is, I'd have a lot of concern about this team in what I think is a pretty deep Western Conference.
Yeah, and again, it's similar to Brooklyn in a sense. And let's not forget, a year ago, Brooklyn was the favorite to win the East. The Lakers were the favorite to win the West. And, of course, neither came even close. As you said, the Lakers didn't even make the play-in tournament. They were the 11th seed in the Western Conference, and there's only 15 teams in that conference. That's pretty bad. But I think, obviously, the key, like with Brooklyn, is health. If LeBron's able to play 65, 70 games and be healthy, he'll be that much better. The X factor for them is Anthony Davis. Now, you want to count on Anthony Davis playing 65 games, that's a tough thing to expect because he's constantly hurt. If those two guys give you 65 to 70 games, they will contend, but you still have Russell Westbrook, who just doesn't fit in. Like he's, in a sense, I look at him as the third guy, complete opposite of Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons could fit seamlessly with Durant and Kyrie. I just don't see Westbrook fitting in with Anthony Davis and LeBron. He's just a weird player. Like he's talk about athletes that aren't self-aware. It's Russell Westbrook is still playing like it's 7-8 years ago when he won an MVP and, started averaging triple doubles. He still thinks he's the guy who should control the ball. Well, that shouldn't be the case when you got LeBron on your team. That'd be like having some other guy who's a backup quarterback who thinks he should play over Tom Brady.
Well, that's also the fault in a sense of the team, and obviously in this case LeBron for pursuing, because they should have been aware of this as well. You know what I mean? So this is and that's why I think that the situation is, at least in Brooklyn, and we obviously we just spent a lot of time talking about Brooklyn. They could come back with the same exact team, and that seems to be the case, and be markedly better than what they were a year ago. I just don't think that's the case with Los Angeles. Now, can they get better just based on health? Sure, but what is that going to amount to? A play-in appearance? Maybe the 6th seed? And in which case, are you counting on that Lakers team to beat a Dallas or, someone else that's probably going to end up with the number 1 or number 2 seed? So that's where I'm looking at it like for Lakers fans, it's great for them, to make sure that LeBron is still in tow, at least what seems to be the rest of his career. And it's always going to create a buzz. I mean, no matter what, it doesn't matter if you win 10 games. If you have LeBron James, you're going to be a relevant team. And the expectations are always going to be high. I don't know. It seems like a tough hole for them to climb out of to get themselves back competitively in time for LeBron to continue to be LeBron. You know what I'm saying? Like they may be able to do it, but it might take 3 or 4 years. And in which case, in 3 years, when LeBron's in his final year of his contract, we don't know if he's going to come back, 1, and 2, we don't know what his ability is going to be like. Because again, I mean, I'm not going to go the Tom Brady thing and expect him to fall off a cliff. I'm not going to say that because, again, at this point, you got to just give him the benefit of the doubt like you should with Tom. But, again, you got to take these things into account. And in basketball, we've seen it's a lot. It seems to be it can be a lot more rapid decline like an overnight thing just because of the demand of the position. And certainly a guy like LeBron, who's played so much extra basketball over the last decade and a half, that eventually I think it's going to add up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of odd to say this, but there's more physical toll on a basketball player, especially the way he plays.
Well,
compared
I
to
think
a quarterback, right?
especially the knees and the legs.
Yes.
Like you can like obviously football is physical in the sense that you get hit, but the wear and tear on your knees as a basketball player, I think are yeah, it's more impactful in the long term. Like you can, I mean, again, I mean, physical wise, I mean, obviously football is a far more physical sport, but durability wise, when it comes to playing a lengthy career, 82 games a season, 20, 30 playoff games a year, I'm talking about LeBron's basically his schedule the last decade and a half, mixing a few Olympics, mixing a few, this, that, and the others. And all of a sudden, this guy's put a lot of miles on those knees. And, eventually, as you know, John, and as I'm finding out myself, as you get older, those knees just don't work quite as well. So,
Yep. No, I mean, he's going to be 38 in December. And like you said, a lot of mileage, and he's a huge guy, 6'9", 260. I mean, he's in great shape. Like Brady, they're both, workaholics. But, yeah, it's going to be a lot to ask for him. And you kind of would think at this point that maybe you scale back what he needs to do, and it was time for Anthony Davis to step up and maybe be the guy. But he's not prepared for that. He's not equipped for that. Just not the way he's wired, right? So LeBron still has to be the guy, and who the hell knows what's going to happen with Russell Westbrook. They may just have to hold on to him for a year because of the contract, and then they move on from that point, and they'll have that slot that they can go out and sign a free agent. I think the Kyrie to L.A. is dead because I think he's going to just stay in Brooklyn. Why wouldn't he at this point and run it back with Durant and Ben Simmons and see what they can achieve this year? So,
go to a potentially worse situation.
Which Kyrie may do, because Kyrie's, not all there himself. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the best thing now is now that the Durant thing is solved, the rest of the league can kind of exhale and start to make other moves, because there's other free agents that haven't signed. Everything was on hold because it seemed like every team was somewhat involved in the Durant sweepstakes, not necessarily to get him, but maybe to play the role of a third team. I know Danny Ainge was just waiting in the wings to get involved in some sort of Durant deal to get capital to Utah, even though he wasn't going to get Durant, because Danny Ainge is a master at getting involved, being the third team that facilitates deals and get draft picks or whatever, because he likes to hoard draft picks for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it kind of worked out. The Celtics are in pretty decent shape right now. It still remains to be seen if this championship ever comes out of it, but I think it's a good bet to say that it probably will, or at least it'll come very close, maybe a little bit closer than they did last year. So before we go, we will mention real quick Jimmy G. Apparently, now again, we've been talking about him for months now, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it. I'm so sick.
No, don't say that.
I'm sick.
I mean, come on. We got one Italian quarterback.
You're biased because he's a Paisan. Yeah. I get it. I understand.
And he's the best looking man in the NFL. So I mean, I think he's relevant too. So which makes sense. The one Italian quarterback is the best looking.
Oh,
guy.
of course. Well, the thing is like we always just assume that he had to be gone. He's gonna have to be gone, whatever. But according to whoever the hell's running the 49ers now, I completely
John Lynch, is that?
It wasn't John Lynch who said it. I think it was the president of the team said they would be more than happy to have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster this year. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is why this team cannot get out of its own way, And it's like they've been blessed with talent. They've had talent on this team, enough talent to get themselves to Super Bowls, but the idea of keeping Jimmy Garoppolo on this roster next year is moronic, John, because you've clearly moved on from him. So the only thing that can happen is negative, and that is, well, what happens if Trey Lance struggles to start the season?
Mm-hmm.
And your starter that led you to a Super Bowl, not a Super Bowl win, but a Super Bowl appearance, is just sitting there waiting in the wings. What happens then? and you're just asking yourself for a disaster. So to me, I think it would be silly for them to hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo, and you just got to bite the bullet and release the guy. Forget about trying to squeeze out. I mean, who the hell is going to trade for him? Seattle?
No one. No one's trading for him. Yeah, no, because then you're on the hook for $25 million. And yeah, what are you going to get a sixth round pick for him? It's not the draft capital that teams don't want to give up. It's guaranteeing him $25 million.
Yeah,
and look, that's the issue.
Look, if Cleveland wanted him, they would have just kept Baker Mayfield.
Right?
What's the difference? I mean, maybe a little bit less of a headache, but at the same time, it's like you're not going to go get Jimmy Garoppolo to start 11 games in Deshaun Watson's stead. So I don't know. I kind of laughed when I saw this because I'm like, that's just stupid. But again, this is the team that twice passed on Tom Brady. So,
well, has the team ever mishandled the situation worse than the 49ers? Right? I mean, they draft Trey Lance. They have to give up 3 first-round picks and some additional draft capital to get Trey Lance, who I think by all accounts is still a question mark. Right? I mean, he was the 3rd overall pick. He didn't have a lot of experience in college, so you're taking a leap of faith to think that he's going to be your guy. He didn't look all that good his rookie year, but that's fine. Quarterbacks will improve in their second year. That happens a lot. Now, if they're saying that they might still be interested in having Garoppolo on the roster, are they still not sold on Trey Lance? That they've seen him in preseason and said maybe this guy isn't it?
Whether they are or not, I mean, the thought's out there. You know what I mean? Because if you're 100% committed to Trey Lance, you're not keeping Jimmy Garoppolo on this roster under any circumstance, whether you can trade him or not. Because again, it just creates this potentially volatile situation for your young quarterback that could stunt his growth or completely stall it. So I don't know. I think it's silly for the 49ers to even consider this, but then again, it's the 49ers, and what are you going to do? This is a team that has all the talent of the world to go out and win a Super Bowl, but they're gonna continue to trip over their own feet if this is the type of tactic that they're going to take moving forward. Oh, we're going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo, even though we've been very vocal about moving on from him the entire offseason. All of a sudden, well, now we're going to keep him on, and if there's an issue, I mean, if Trey Lance struggles, regardless of whether or not they plan on going to him, that's going to be the conversation. The first thing Monday morning, is it time to go back to Jimmy Garoppolo? Was it a mistake to go to Trey Lance? Yada, 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 yada. So to me, I think it's a foolish move to keep Jimmy G on this roster.
Yeah, I would think just move on, right? Because it can kind of suffocate the organization. Release him. You're not going to get anything for him. Look, for a 2nd-round pick, you got pretty good quarterback play from Jimmy Garoppolo for 5 years. I mean, when he started, they won 72% of their games. They went to a Super Bowl. They went to an NFC Championship game. I'd say he was fairly successful. Yeah. If he had been able to be durable and better in the 4th quarter of last year's NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, you might be looking at 2 Super Bowl wins. But overall, pretty successful, right? So I guess you just move on from him. You're not going to get anything back in return. And handle this with class at some point. Let the guy go and hook on with another team, because that doesn't look good throughout the league where players are like, what's going on in San Francisco? Do they really even know what they're doing there?
Yeah, and because, by all accounts, it seems like they're just going to hang on to him because they can't get any compensation. It's like, come on, guys. The guy's 30-something years old now. Give him a chance to go out there and, get one more big contract, whatever. Because, we're not in the business of hating Jimmy G. I just don't think he's a great quarterback. So,
I'm with you on that. I think he's a good quarterback.
He's good.
But that's about what he is. Yeah,
but that's the thing. Good doesn't necessarily win you Super Bowls. It's greatness that wins you Super Bowls. So
yeah, and look, even greatness doesn't win you Super Bowl. Yeah. Tell me about
it. Well, I'm sure we'll that'll be a main point of focus for much of the season coming up. So, with that said, though, we are going to say goodbye for the day. Thank you very much. Tune in on Friday. We will be back to kind of get us geared up for yet one more weekend of preseason football. And then, guess what, John? It's time. It's time to sit our asses on the couch every single Sunday and not move for 9-10 hours at a time. So, thank you. Good. Yeah, I like it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, at Full Press Radio, of course, and go to fullpresscoverage.com, fullpresshockey.com, and check out all the great stuff happening over there. Have a good one, folks, and we will talk